Welcome back to our channel, Serious Story Sessions. If you like our content and wish to see more from us, please click that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for future videos. Your support means the world to us, and we thank you. Enjoy the video. My 27F boyfriend, 29M of 5 years, just revealed he's been lying about his entire identity. I don't even know where to start. My hands are still shaking as I type this. 5 years of my life feel like they've been erased overnight. I guess I should start from the beginning so this all makes sense. I remember the day I met Jake like it was yesterday. It was late October in 2018, and the air was nippy and chilled. It was the kind that makes your lungs ache and your hands feel raw. Even through your coat, I was 22, and the proud owner marketing degree with a minor in French literature, and I had finally landed a real job at a mid-sized marketing firm after a summer of post-college panic and temp work. Every morning I went to work, I would stop at this tiny local coffee shop, the kind that still used chalkboards and hadn't updated its decor in at least a decade. Jake quite literally crashed into my life. He was standing behind me in line, talking animatedly on his phone, something about Q4 projections and client deliverables. And when I turned to reach for a lid, he bumped into my elbow, sending my entire freshly poured latte cascading down the front of my brand new blouse. The shock of hot liquid and the carelessness of it had me gasping and blinking back tears, half from embarrassment and half from the sting of burnt skin and pride. But then, Jake was immediately at my side, apologizing and showering me with napkins. He offered to pay for dry cleaning and buy me another latte. He had the kind of smile that made you forgive him instantly, deep dimples and a little crinkle at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled a lot. He was sharply dressed in a way that most men in this neighborhood were not. A tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, and a tie with a subtle grid pattern. Even though his hair was a little messy from the wind, something about the way he carried himself made me feel inexplicably seen, like the chaos of the morning had converged just to create this moment. We ended up sitting together, side by side, at the counter, facing the window, sipping our respective lattes, his, black, no sugar, mine, replaced, thanks to his credit card. Conversation came easily. He was funny without trying, the kind of dry, self-deprecating wit that suggested his childhood was spent reading books under the covers. When he asked about me, he actually listened, nodding, following up with thoughtful questions instead of waiting for his turn to talk. I found myself telling him small, inconsequential secrets before my coffee was even half gone. It felt like the universe had decided to throw me a bone after months of loneliness and routine. After an hour, he walked me out, pulling the door open with a theatrical bow and a flourish of his hand. He asked for my number, but in the non-creepy, non-pushy way that suggested he would be fine if I said no. I didn't say no. I remember practically skipping back to my apartment, blouse still damp and clinging to my skin, but feeling lighter than I had in ages. Jake told me he was a financial consultant who had just moved to the city for work. He was originally from Seattle, went to Stanford, and had traveled extensively for his job. His parents had passed away when he was in college, and he didn't have many close friends in the area yet. I felt special that he was opening up to me so quickly. We immediately started dating, and everything was perfect. He was attentive, romantic, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. After a year, we moved in together. He paid for most of our apartment, which was way nicer than I could afford on my salary, because he said his job paid well and he wanted to take care of me. The first red flag appeared about 2 years in. We were at a work event for my company, and my coworker mentioned Stanford's football team. Jake seemed confused, then quickly changed the subject. I didn't think much of it at the time. I didn't know much about my own college's football team either. Then there were the mysterious business trips. He'd leave for days, or sometimes weeks, always to different cities. When I'd ask about his work, he'd give vague answers about client confidentiality. He never wanted me to drop him off at the airport, saying he preferred Ubers because of the early flight times. His phone was always locked, and he'd get tense if I picked it up to even check the time. Again, I brushed it off as him being private about his work. I could understand that. I thought it was sweet he cared about his clients so much. 3 years into our relationship, I still hadn't met any of his friends from before we met. He always had excuses for why we couldn't visit Seattle, or why his college buddies were too busy to meet up. He'd never shown me photos of his childhood, or his parents. When I'd ask, he'd say it was too painful to look at them. I believed him wholeheartedly. I was an idiot. Fast forward to last week, and you'll understand why my skin hasn't stopped crawling since. It was a normal Monday evening, the kind that blurs into all the others. Jake was home late after a so-called client dinner, still in his shirt and tie, the sleeves rumpled and the knot hanging loose. We ate leftovers on the couch and watched half an episode of some true crime doc before he crashed, snoring with his head in my lap by 9:45. The next morning, he left in a flurry, forgetting his laptop charging on the kitchen counter. It was nothing out of the ordinary. He often worked from home on Tuesdays, but he was out early that day for a dentist appointment. I was filling my mug with coffee when I heard the ding of an email notification from his laptop. At first, I ignored it. But then, a few minutes later, thoughts of doubt creeped in my mind. The notification glowed in the corner of the screen, the little red exclamation mark demanding attention. I've never been the snooping type. I know everyone says that, but I mean it. I've had enough trust issues in my life that I made a deliberate point not to let them poison this relationship. Still, there was something about the insistence of the notifications that made my scalp prickle. Jake had always been protective of his screens, his phone, his laptop, even his work tablet. He was the kind of person who locked his phone just to go to the bathroom. He said it was a privacy thing, a habit from working with sensitive financial documents. I always respected that, maybe too much. But this time, I don't know. Maybe it was the way he'd been so distracted lately, the way his eyes flicked to his phone every time it buzzed, even when we were sharing a meal. Or the fact that he'd been gone more than usual these past few months, with trips to client sites that never seemed to leave a paper trail or even a boarding pass. Or maybe I was just tired of gaslighting myself out of every lingering doubt. So I cracked. My hands hovered over the laptop for a solid minute before I gave in and tapped the trackpad. The screen woke, revealing his inbox, unlocked, just sitting there, Jake's entire digital life wide open. The latest email sat at the top, subject line, Michael, payment confirmation. At first, I thought it was junk mail, but the sender's name was just Sarah. No company, no logo, nothing official. I clicked it open. I swear my vision tunneled as I read. The email was brief, almost businesslike. Hi, Michael. Just confirming that we received this month's payment. Thank you for keeping up with the schedule. The kids are asking when you'll be coming to visit again. Let us know your next availability. Sarah. Michael, not Jake. Michael. My hands started shaking so hard, I splashed coffee all over the counter, dark beads seeping into the grout. Still, I couldn't stop. I scrolled through his inbox, scanning for more messages addressed to Michael. They were everywhere. Some were receipts for wire transfers, some were short, friendly notes. Happy birthday, congrats on the new job, let's catch up soon. I didn't want to look, but I kept going. Something in me wanted to know everything there was to know. I scrolled back, months, then years. The oldest emails dated back to before we met. Hundreds, no, thousands of emails, all addressed to Michael, none to Jake. It was like my boyfriend's entire online existence was split between two worlds. There were a handful of messages to Jake, all work-related, all with his public-facing email, but the rest, the real ones, were addressed to Michael. I checked his sent folder. That's when the bile rose in my throat. All his replies were signed Michael, too. I felt like I was living in a funhouse mirror of my own life. Every memory I thought was real, every sweet moment, every confession, suddenly had this ugly, double-exposed shadow underneath it. I wanted to throw his laptop out the window. I wanted to scream at him, to call him, to demand explanations and apologies and all the missing pieces. But instead, I sat on the floor of our kitchen, knees drawn up to my chin, the glow of the laptop screen painting everything in sickly blue light, and just read, Kids? Payment? Michael? I dug deeper, not that I'm proud of it, and found hundreds of emails where he was referred to as Michael Williams, not Jake Turner. I found photos of him with 2 children and a woman who appeared to be their mother. There were bank statements showing regular payments to this Sarah person. When Jake, or Michael, came home from his appointment, I confronted him. At first, he tried to deny everything, saying his email had been hacked, but when I showed him all the evidence I'd found, he broke down. He confessed everything in a voice I barely recognized. It was thin and quavering, nothing like the confident tone that had charmed me for 5 years. My real name is Michael Williams, he said, staring at his hands. Not Jake Turner. The name fell between us like a stone. I've been married for 10 years, to Sarah. We have 2 kids in Chicago. Ellie is 8 and Ben is 6. I pictured the faceless children from the email suddenly given names, ages, lives that existed parallel to mine. Remember all those stories about growing up near the Space Needle? About sailing on Puget Sound? He shook his head. I've never even been to Seattle before meeting you. I grew up in Naperville, just a boring suburb outside Chicago. Each revelation landed like a slap across my face. And Stanford? He laughed bitterly. I went to Harper College. It's a community college in Illinois. No prestigious MBA, no fraternity brothers, no Silicon Valley connections, just student loans and a 2-year degree in business administration. The prestigious consultant who commanded rooms was dissolving before my eyes, replaced by a stranger whose entire history had been fabricated specifically for me. The room was filled with the sound of my heart pounding in my chest, drowning out his weak apologies and explanations. The sound of shattered trust echoed through the air, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The more I pressed, the more the truth came out, peeling away in thick, sticky layers. The business trips that once seemed so mysterious and vital to his work had nothing to do with landing new clients or crunching numbers in distant boardrooms. They were, in fact, long weekends spent shuttling between our city and a suburb just outside Chicago, where his real life waited for him. I pictured him stepping off flights, swapping out the sleek, tailored suits he wore for me for the dad jeans and fleece vests that had never once appeared in our apartment closet. I imagined him driving a minivan to soccer games, buying birthday cakes at strip mall bakeries, attending recitals and parent-teacher conferences, all while I sat at home, scrolling through our shared calendar to see which dates he'd blocked out for client pitches. The lies weren't even clever, just exquisitely boring. The consulting job, too, was only half true, if that. Yes, he worked in finance, but not as some high-flying strategist as I'd pictured. He was not the type of man who gave TED Talks or served on nonprofit boards, as I had so often boasted to my friends. He was a low-level analyst at a mid-tier firm, his name barely above the interns on the company directory. His business cards, those gleaming, embossed tokens of prestige, were printed at home, the title fabricated, the email address a forwarding trick. And the salary, nowhere near enough to cover the rent on our apartment or the weekends away, or the gifts that arrived monthly like clockwork. The real source of our comfortable lifestyle was a trust fund, not for him, but for the children he had with Sarah. The money came from her family, old Chicago blue bloods who wrote checks big enough to make entire decades disappear. Every dollar he spent on me was, in a way, a theft from them. I felt sick. Even after his confession, Jake, or Michael, as I tried and failed to call him, insisted he loved me, that ours was the real him, the truest version. He spun out a tangle of justifications. Sarah and he had been separated for years, in all but name. The marriage was dead, but the logistics of disentangling their finances, their lives, their shared responsibilities made divorce impossible for now. He told me that when he was with me, he breathed easier, laughed more, wanted for nothing. He said I made him believe in second chances, that his life with me was an escape from the suffocating expectations of his old world. The words sounded familiar, sweet even, until I realized I had no way of knowing if he meant any of it. Maybe he was just good at the script. Maybe he'd told Sarah the same things years ago. Maybe he was telling them to her now. As I listened, I thought of every conversation we'd had about trust, about new beginnings, about the future. I thought of the way I'd watched him sleep, heart swelling with the hope that, at last, I'd found someone safe, someone steady I thought of every time I'd excused his absences, every time I'd believed his explanations, every time I'd tamped down the little voice that warned me no one is ever quite what they seem. He apologized until his face was blue, until I had to look away. It was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. That night, I sat in our apartment, surrounded by all the tiny artifacts of a shared life, and realized the math of it. I was not the love story, not the main plotline. I was the affair, the secret. I was the other woman, for 5 years. I asked why he did this. I felt trapped, he whispered, voice cracking. The marriage was suffocating me, but the kids... He ran his fingers through his hair, leaving it standing in sweaty spikes. God, Ellie and Ben need their father. I couldn't just walk away. His hands trembled as he reached for mine. I pulled back. You have to understand, he pleaded. I fell in love with you when I never expected to feel anything again. This lie, it was the only way I could keep you both. I left that same night, if it counts as leaving when you have nowhere to go. I didn't bother to take anything but a change of clothes, my toothbrush, and my laptop. I sat in the lobby downstairs for hours with my bag at my feet, staring at the textured wallpaper and trying to remember how to breathe, I texted my sister at 2:07 a.m., and she called me right back, not even pretending to be asleep. "I'll come get you," she said, and she did. She showed up in an old hoodie, hair in a bun, keys jangling in her hand, and just hugged me for a long, long time, right there in the lobby of the apartment. The tears came then, ugly and unstoppable, as if my body had been waiting for someone else to be in charge before it let go. At her apartment, she made tea and sat up with me, listening as I pieced together the whole story in bits and fragments. She didn't interrupt, not even when I confessed how much I'd suspected, but never wanted to admit. When I finished, she just squeezed my hand and said, "You're staying here as long as you need." Days blurred together, I slept in her guest room, surrounded by childhood photographs and old track team trophies, and tried to remember how to exist without a double shot of adrenaline and betrayal running through me at all times. I called in sick to work. I ignored all of our mutual friends. I just wanted to lay in bed and stare at the ceiling. So I did. I began counting the tiny cracks in the plaster, thinking of all the alternate versions of my life that could have been. Meanwhile, Michael, Jake, whatever his name was, tried every possible way to reach me. The phone vibrated off the nightstand at all hours. If I didn't pick up, he left voicemails I couldn't bear to listen to, then sent texts, paragraphs at a time, then single word please, then photos of the flowers he'd left on our apartment stoop. He's been calling and texting nonstop, begging for forgiveness. He claims he was going to tell me eventually, and that he really does love me. He says he's finally filed for divorce and wants to start over with me. 5 years was far too long for him to start making amends now. I feel like I'm living in a bad movie. The past 5 years of my life have been with someone who doesn't exist. All those future plans we made, the house we were saving for, the trips we wanted to take, even the casual mentions of having children someday, were built on complete lies. I don't know what to do. I love the person I thought he was, but that person was never real. Do I give him a chance to explain further? Do I contact his wife? Do I just block him and try to move on? Has anyone else discovered their partner was living a double life? How did you cope? I feel like I'm losing my mind. TLDR. My boyfriend of 5 years just revealed he's actually married with kids and has been living a double life the entire time we've been together. Edit. Thank you all for your responses. To answer some common questions, yes, I've considered contacting his wife, but I'm worried about how it might affect their children. I have no proof he's actually filed for divorce. That's just what he's claiming now that he's been caught. And no, I had no idea he was traveling to see another family. He always said his trips were for work and would send me photos of hotel rooms and conference centers. Update 1. I just got off the phone with my best friend, who reminded me of something I completely forgot in my shock. Last year, Jake Michael and I ran into a man at a restaurant who clearly recognized him, but called him Mike. Jake Michael played it off as a case of mistaken identity, and the man apologized. I remember feeling embarrassed for the stranger. Now I realize that man probably knew him from his real life. Also, many of you have suggested I gather all my evidence before doing anything. Thank you for that. I've taken screenshots of everything I found and sent them to my personal email. I also checked our lease agreement, and thankfully both our names are on it. So he can't just kick me out. I'm planning to go back to our apartment tomorrow, when he's supposed to be at work, to get more of my things. I will post another update after I've secured all of my belongings. Thank you all so much for your support. Update 2. Okay. So today I drove back to our apartment today, and guys, buckle in, because you won't believe what just happened. I'm currently sitting in my sister's apartment, shaking from the events of today. So, according to his work calendar I'd memorized over the years, he should have been in a quarterly planning meeting until at least 3 p.m. That gave me 2 hours to grab everything I needed and disappear again. The building looked the same as it always had. The doorman nodded at me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Did he know? Had he seen Michael bringing other women here when I was away? The thought made me nauseous. "Welcome back, Miss Chen," he said. "Haven't seen you in a few days." I forced a smile. "Just been staying with my sister," I replied. His eyes lingered on me a moment too long. "Mr. Turner was asking about you this morning." Turner, not Williams. The false name rolled off his tongue so naturally. "Was he?" My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "Said to let him know right away if you came by." My heart stuttered. "Please don't. I just need to grab some things in peace." The doorman's expression shifted subtly. I'd never confided in him, but he'd worked here for years. He must have seen countless relationships deteriorate behind these walls. "I understand," he said quietly. "Take your time. I didn't see you today." I took a breath of relief. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt long. Our apartment? No, his apartment now, had never seemed so far away. When the doors finally opened, I stepped out cautiously, listening for any sound that might indicate Michael had come home early. Silence. Thank God. My key still worked. I didn't expect it not to. I knew he wouldn't change the locks this quickly, especially when he was still trying to get me to come home. The door swung open to reveal the space that had been my home for 4 years. Everything looked untouched, perfectly arranged. The mid-century furniture we'd picked out together, the abstract prints on the walls, the throw pillows I'd insisted on despite his protests that they were impractical. It was a beautiful lie, meticulously curated. I moved quickly, grabbing suitcases from the hall closet and filling them with my clothes, my books, my jewelry. Each item felt both precious and meaningless now, tainted by the knowledge that they'd been part of this fabricated life. I took my birth certificate from the file cabinet, my grandmother's jade necklace from the jewelry box, the backup hard drive with all my photos. I was in our bedroom, halfway through emptying my dresser when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a key in the front door. My blood ran cold. It wasn't even 1:30 yet. He shouldn't be home. I froze. A stack of sweaters clutched to my chest as footsteps moved through the living room, heavy, purposeful, not trying to be quiet. "Elise!" His voice carried down the hallway. "Your car's outside. I know you're here." I said nothing, mind racing. There was no other exit from the bedroom except through the main living area. I was trapped. The footsteps drew closer. I set down the sweaters and squared my shoulders. If this confrontation was inevitable, I wouldn't cower, especially because I was not the one who blew up our relationship. He was. Michael appeared in the doorway, still wearing his work clothes, but with his tie loosened. His face looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and stubble shadowing his jaw. For a moment, we just stared at each other. "You're packing," he finally said, his eyes moving to the open suitcases on the bed. "You're supposed to be at work," I countered. A bitter laugh escaped him. "I haven't been able to focus on anything since you left. They sent me home." "How inconvenient for you." My voice was sharper than I'd intended. He took a step forward, and I instinctively backed away. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. I couldn't tell anymore. I'd lost my ability to read the man I thought I knew. "Please don't leave like this," he said, his voice dropping to that gentle tone he'd always used when we fought, the one that usually made me soften. "Reconsider. We need to talk about this." "We've talked enough," I shot back. "No, we haven't." He moved to block the doorway. "You haven't let me explain everything." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Move, Michael." That was the first time I used his real name out loud. The name felt foreign on my tongue, sharp-edged and wrong. He flinched at the sound of it. "I'm still the same person, Elise. The name doesn't change who I am with you." "Who you are?" I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. "I don't know who you are. That's the whole point." "Everything I felt for you was real," he insisted, taking another step toward me. "Everything we shared." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. Do you have any idea what it's like to discover your entire relationship was built on lies? That the person you trusted most in the world doesn't even exist?" His face crumpled. "I exist. This," he gestured between us, "exists. I filed for divorce, Elise. I told Sarah everything." The mention of her name, his wife's name, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "And what did she say? Was she surprised to learn her husband has been living a double life for 5 years?" He looked away. She knew something was wrong. She's known for a while that I wasn't happy." "Did she know about me?" Silence. "Did your children know their father was constructing an elaborate fantasy with another woman?" My voice broke on the last word. "Leave them out of this," he said sharply. "You brought them into this," I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of it. "You made them part of your lies." We stared at each other, both breathing hard. In the silence that followed, I heard the faint sound of a phone vibrating. Michael's hand moved reflexively toward his pocket, then stopped. "Is that her?" I asked quietly. "Your wife?" He didn't answer, but his expression told me everything. Even now, caught between his two worlds, he was being pulled in both directions. "I need to get my things and go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "No." He moved fully into the doorway now, blocking my exit. "Not until you hear me out. I love you, Elise. I've loved you since that first day in the coffee shop. Nothing about that was fake. Love doesn't lie for 5 years. I was trapped. You have to understand. I don't have to understand anything. The rage I'd been suppressing finally erupted. You had choices, Michael. Every day for 5 years, you chose to lie to me. You chose to go back to your family and lie to them, too. You chose all of this. His phone vibrated again, more insistently this time. With a muttered curse, he pulled it from his pocket and glanced at the screen. Whatever he saw there drained the color from his face. I need to take this, he said, already turning away. Of course you do. The bitterness in my voice could have corroded metal. He stepped into the hallway, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but the tension in his posture told me something was wrong. Very wrong. I seized my chance, grabbing as much as I could and stuffing it into the nearest suitcase. I zipped it quickly and grabbed my purse, ready to push past him as soon as he finished his call. But when he returned to the bedroom doorway, his face had transformed. The pleading lover was gone, replaced by something colder, more desperate. That was Sarah, he said, his voice eerily calm. She's on her way here, with the kids. I froze. What? She found our address. I don't know how. His laugh was hollow. Maybe the same way you found all those emails. Nothing stays hidden forever, right? I felt like I was going to be sick. Your wife and children are coming here? Now? He nodded, running his hands through his hair in that familiar nervous gesture. She says they deserve to see the truth. All of it. I can't be here for that. I grabbed my suitcase handle. I won't be part of your family drama. Please, he said, and there was real fear in his eyes now. Stay. Help me explain. If we face this together... Together? I stared at him in disbelief. There is no together, Michael. There never was, it was all in my head. I tried to move past him, but he caught my arm. His grip wasn't painful, but it was firm enough to stop me. Let go of me, I said quietly. I can't lose you both, he whispered. I can't lose everything. Something in his desperation frightened me more than his lies ever had. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. This was someone cornered, unpredictable. You already have, I said, wrenching my arm free. Now move, or I'm calling the police. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes, a calculation I couldn't read. Then his phone chimed with a text message, and whatever spell had held him broke. He stepped aside. I didn't wait for him to change his mind. I wheeled my suitcase past him, not looking back, as I hurried through the apartment that had once been my sanctuary. At the front door, some masochistic impulse made me pause and turn. Michael stood in the hallway, watching me. In that moment, he looked smaller somehow, diminished by the collapse of his carefully constructed worlds. I really did love you, he said softly. I met his eyes one last time. No. You loved the escape I provided. There's a difference. I closed the door on his response and practically ran to the elevator, praying it would arrive before Sarah and her children did. The last thing I needed was to come face to face with the family I'd unknowingly helped destroy. As the elevator descended, I walked out, bolting for my car. I threw everything in as fast as I could and drove back to my sister's house. When I got there, she walked out. Just the sight of her made me burst into tears again. She grabbed the suitcases and helped me inside. Once in, I sat on her couch as she made me tea. And that's where we are at now. I feel even more lost and confused. But it means the world that I have so many people rallying behind me. I appreciate all of your guys' support. I will update soon if anything else happens. I think my next step is to get a lawyer, because the man I once loved is now a stranger to me. And even worse, he's unpredictable. Update 3. I've contacted a lawyer through the advice of my sister and some of you in the comments. They advised me to document everything and to consider filing a police report for emotional abuse and possible financial fraud. They said, if he continues to escalate his behavior, we can use the evidence to file a restraining order against him. I don't know if it will come to that, but I want to be prepared. I've also changed all my passwords and checked my credit report to make sure he hasn't opened any accounts in my name. Thankfully, everything looks clean on that front last night. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sarah, this woman whose life had been upended just like mine. What did she know? What had Michael told her? The questions circled in my mind like vultures, and I finally gave in to my curiosity around 2 a.m. I searched for Sarah Williams on social media, adding Chicago to narrow it down. I found her almost immediately, Her profile picture showed her with two children, a girl and a boy, who looked exactly like the photos I'd seen in Michael's emails. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through her profile. She seemed so normal, so genuine. Pictures of birthday parties, family vacations, school events, all with Michael present, smiling that familiar smile that I'd thought belonged only to me. Before I could talk myself out of it, I sent her a message. Hi, Sarah. You don't know me, but I'm Elise. I think we need to talk about Michael. I recently discovered he's been living a double life with me for the past 5 years. I understand if you don't want to speak with me, but I think we both deserve the truth. I'm not trying to cause more pain, just looking for closure. I hit send and immediately regretted it. What was I thinking? This poor woman had just had her marriage blown apart, and here I was, the other woman, reaching out in the middle of the night. I closed my laptop and finally fell into a restless sleep. To my surprise, I woke up to a response from Sarah. Elise, I've been hoping you would reach out. I have questions too. Could we meet somewhere public? There's a lot Michael hasn't told either of us, I think. We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, public enough to feel safe, but quiet enough for a private conversation. I arrived 20 minutes early, my nerves making it impossible to sit still. I chose a table in the corner, facing the door so I could see her come in. When Sarah walked in, I recognized her immediately. She was tall and slender, with shoulder-length brown hair and kind eyes that looked tired around the edges. She spotted me and walked over, her steps hesitant but determined. Elise? She asked, though she clearly knew it was me. I nodded, standing awkwardly. Sarah, thank you for coming. We sat across from each other, both clutching our coffee cups like lifelines. I'm sorry, we both said simultaneously, then gave surprised laughs that quickly faded into silence. You have nothing to apologize for, Sarah said finally. You didn't know about me. And you didn't know about me, I replied. We're both victims here. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears that she quickly blinked away. 5 years, she said quietly. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined this. When did you find out? I asked. Only when he flew home after you confronted him. He was a mess. Crying, confessing, everything. She took a sip of her coffee. He said he was in love with you, that he'd been living this whole other life. I thought I was losing my mind. That makes 2 of us, I said. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I found these after he told me everything. She handed me the phone, open to a photo album labeled Family. I scrolled through pictures of their life together, holidays, school plays, family dinners. In every photo, Michael looked happy, content, like the loving father and husband he claimed he wasn't. It was surreal seeing him in this other context, playing this other role so convincingly. He told me your marriage was unhappy, I said, handing the phone back. Yet that you were basically separated, but staying together for the kids. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Of course he did. That's what men like Michael do. They rewrite history to justify their actions. She shook her head. We had problems like any couple, but I thought we were working through them. I had no idea he felt trapped. The children, I started, hesitant to bring them up. How are they handling this? Sarah's face softened. They're confused. Ellie keeps asking when Daddy's coming home. Ben is just quiet, which worries me more. They're the only reason I haven't completely fallen apart. I'm so sorry, I whispered. It's not your fault, she insisted. Michael did this to all of us. We talked for over an hour, comparing notes on the lies he'd told, the inconsistencies we'd noticed but ignored. It was cathartic, in a strange way, to piece together the full picture of the man we'd both loved. He told her the same lies he told me. Every time he'd disappear, he told her it was for business. That's what we were to him, just business. What will you do now? I asked. File for divorce, obviously, Sarah said with quiet resolve. Focus on the kids. Try to rebuild. She looked at me directly. What about you? I'm staying with my sister for now. I've talked to a lawyer about the lease on our apartment and... I stopped mid-sentence as the coffee shop door banged open. Michael stood there, his face contorted with rage as his eyes locked on our table. What the hell is this? He shouted, striding toward us. Sarah flinched, and I felt my body go rigid with fear. Michael, calm down, Sarah said, her voice low and steady. Calm down. He laughed, the sound harsh and unnatural. I find my wife and my girlfriend having coffee together, and you want me to calm down? People around us were staring now, some pulling out their phones. We're just talking, I said, trying to keep my voice even. We both deserved answers. So you two decided to compare notes? He snarled. Turn against me together? No one is turning against you, Sarah said, standing up. But you can't expect us to just accept what you've done without... Without what? Without ganging up on me? He slammed his hand on the table, making our coffee cups jump. I was going to fix everything. I was filing for divorce. I was going to make it right. By continuing to lie to both of us? I asked. His face darkened as he turned to me. I never lied about loving you. You lied about everything else, I shot back. Something in him snapped. He grabbed my coffee cup and hurled it against the wall, the ceramic shattering and coffee splattering across the floor. A woman at the next table screamed, Michael! Sarah gasped. He wasn't listening. He swept his arm across our table, sending Sarah's coffee, our phones, and her purse flying. You've ruined everything, he shouted. Both of you! The barista was on the phone now, clearly calling the police. Other customers were backing away, some filming the scene on their phones. We need to go, I said to Sarah, grabbing her arm. Now! Michael blocked our path. We're not done here, he growled. Yes, we are, Sarah said, her voice trembling but firm. You need help, Michael. This isn't you. You don't know me, he spat. Neither of you do. That's because you never let us, I said quietly. The manager approached cautiously. Sir, I need you to leave now. The police are on their way. Michael looked around, suddenly seeming to realize where he was and what he was doing. The rage drained from his face, replaced by a look of panic. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Sarah and I stood frozen for a moment before collapsing back into our seats, both shaking. I've never seen him like that, she whispered. Never. Me neither, I admitted. He always seemed so controlled. The manager brought us napkins and fresh coffee, apologizing profusely as if the incident had been his fault. The police will be here soon if you want to file a report, he said. Sarah and I exchanged looks. Yes, I said firmly. We do. 2 hours later, after giving statements to the police and exchanging contact information, Sarah and I parted ways with a promise to keep in touch. The officer had advised us both to consider restraining orders, given Michael's erratic behavior. As soon as I got back to my sister's apartment, I called my lawyer. I need to file for a restraining order, I said when she picked up. Things have escalated. I recounted the coffee shop incident, my voice surprisingly steady despite the fear still coursing through me. I'll file the paperwork immediately, my lawyer assured me. In the meantime, document everything. Texts, calls, emails. If he shows up anywhere near you, call the police right away. After hanging up, I checked my phone to find 6 missed calls and a dozen texts from Michael, ranging from apologetic to accusatory. I forwarded them all to my lawyer without reading them fully, then blocked his number. My sister came home to find me sitting on her couch, staring at nothing. What happened? She asked, alarmed by my expression. As I told her about meeting Sarah and Michael's outburst, I felt something shifting inside me, the last lingering threads of love I'd felt for him snapping one by one. The man I'd loved would never have behaved that way. The man I'd loved had never existed at all. You're doing the right thing, my sister said, holding my hand tightly. The restraining order, cutting contact, all of it. I know, I replied. I just wish I'd seen the truth sooner. That night, as I tried to sleep, my phone lit up with a notification. It was from Sarah, a simple message that brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for being brave enough to reach out. We'll get through this, both of us. We're stronger than his lies. For the first time since discovering Michael's deception, I felt something like hope. Not for reconciliation, or even for justice, but for healing, for moving forward. For reclaiming the life that had been built on someone else's lies. Tomorrow, I would meet with my lawyer at the courthouse. To finalize the restraining order, I would start looking for my own apartment. I would begin the process of disentangling myself from the web Michael had woven around us all. But tonight, I let myself grieve for what I'd thought was real, and find solace in the unexpected solidarity of another woman who understood exactly what I was going through. Final update, it's been 3 weeks since my world imploded. I've blocked him on everything and am moving to a new apartment within my budget next week. The apartment has good security, which I needed to feel safe. The restraining order was now in effect for the next 2 years, but part of me wondered if Michael would disregard it entirely. I've also started therapy to process this betrayal. I've only been to 2 sessions so far, but I have already unpacked a lot of trauma. Sarah and I have both filed police reports, and there's apparently an ongoing investigation into his activities. The police informed my lawyer, who then informed me, that they found 2 other aliases for Michael. One dating back 3 years ago, and one before he had even met Sarah. I relayed the information to Sarah, who was now back in Chicago with her children and her parents. I was glad she was safe and supported. My sister has been a godsend. She plans to help me move into my new apartment and checks in on me daily to see how I am handling things. I am so grateful for her. Thank you all for your support during this nightmare. If there's one thing I've learned, it's to trust my instincts. The red flags were there all along. I just didn't want to see them. To anyone reading this who senses something isn't right in their relationship, trust that feeling. Those little inconsistencies, the explanations that never quite add up, the defensive reactions to innocent questions, they matter. I ignored dozens of red flags because I wanted to believe in the life we were building. I convinced myself that suspicion was the same as betrayal, that asking questions meant I didn't trust him enough. Don't make my mistake. If you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next batch of stories. See you all next time. Goodbye for now.